To stream. Boy, on Sunday this did not go well. For some reason it would record the stream, but not actually stream the stream, and then it wouldn't even do that. So I'm hoping that was just a weird, glitch, and the stream will work now. Yay! Huzzah! Whatever problem Twitch had is gone. Oh, wow, it's loud in my headset, though. Mute. Alright. So, I'll go post to tell people that I'm actually streaming. How unusual. Tweet. Streaming some hashtag, not @ hashtag. Hashtag game dev. Gonna do some people stuff and maybe model a spaceship. Twitch works today. Paste. Exciting stuff, that. So it's been almost a week since I actually sat down with the code for this game. I spent a lot of time doing some exploration on how to try and make fun parts that snap together well. And I might go and do more work on that if I feel the urge. But we really should code at least some, because it's gonna be what the game needs in order to actually get anywhere. If we don't code anything, then we don't have anything. I did make a whole bunch of small changes. For example, I implemented the system for engines, and I also implemented wrote the design system for how missions work, how the gameplay works, in more great detail than I had done before. And I think it's going to be good. I think it's going to be fun. Of course, I have to actually do stuff. Like, it needs to actually work. The core problem of game design, making stuff work. Now, normally speaking, at this point, someone would say something like, it's all UI at this point. I hate UI. As I've explained dozens of times, most of the time when someone says they hate UI, what they actually mean is they hate trying to develop all of the stuff and do UI for it at the same time. Because normally what happens, I don't have to even pause it anymore, it just pauses itself, how nice. Because normally what happens is someone says, all I need to do is do the UI for the inventory system, and they haven't programmed an inventory system yet, so they're trying to tackle two problems at once. And so right now what I don't have a UI problem, I have a there's nothing behind it problem. The UI also needs work, but what I need to do is start to work on the concept of this being an event where I can talk to people and interact with people and change things. Erdroy says, hello, what's today? For me, writing rendering for my Minecraft-like something. I'm doing the opposite. I'm clicking on stuff for my non-Minecraft-like thing. But hello, you are welcome to this channel as always. So what we have now is if I click on people, they'll say stuff. And I don't currently have a camera control. I'll implement the camera control later. But because you can click on people and have them say things, the next step would be to click on things and have options available, right? So let's go over the fundamental concepts of how this game is played. As time goes on, the characters become more stressed out, and eventually they stress out past a certain point, and they begin to break shit accidentally, because spaceships require a ton of maintenance, and if you're stressed out and tired, you break something. At higher stress levels, they might get in fights or something, but just at the basic level, they break stuff. And of course, you're in the middle of space, and having stuff break isn't great. So when stuff breaks, you have three basic options as to what you can do about that. One option is you can leave it broken. Another option is you can repair it using a sacrificial part that has similar value. So for example, this airlock broke. I could repair it by breaking the other airlock, or by breaking the bathroom or something similar. It would have to be something that has roughly the same cost. If I had like a parts container, some kind of repair bay or something similar, I could expend things from there to repair it. So that's one option, repairing it. The last option is to assign crew members to make it functional, and the crew members have to work at it 24/7 to force it into function. So you probably wouldn't do that with this because you've got a spare, but we also broke our main fuel tank, as you can see. So this, we probably would want to have this fixed up. So we could either repair it by sacrificing something else, or we could assign someone to baby it 24/7. Now, if someone is assigned to baby it 24/7, they don't gain experience points, and they can't use relaxation rooms. That's really strenuous. And if you do that, you probably want to switch them out once in a while. So the idea is you have to juggle this stuff. There's lots of stuff you can do outside of simply repairing these parts. Repairing the parts is the drag on your play. So if you don't have any parts broken, and no parts are breaking, then what you would be doing is you'd be optimizing your stress rooms, you'd be directing people to gain experience in certain ways or advance their careers, you'd be setting people up with friendships or romances. But we'll get to that stuff later. For now, we want to have this stuff work. So if we take a look at the fuel tank, you can take a look at the prices involved, and this is how we determine what needs to be sacrificed in order to repair it. And the person who broke it will suggest something that can be used to repair it. It's a plan they'll put forth. In this case, this cost 1 unit of T0 materials. So it cost 1 industrial unit, which is roughly equivalent to like a work year, 1 person working for a year. So that's what this costs to put into space. And in order to repair it, we would need to have something of similar cost. For example, this, which coincidentally, as a different kind of storage tank, has basically the same cost. So what we could do is, in theory, we could scrap one of these extra water tanks. Is this a water tank? Yeah, this one of these extra water tanks and be like, we don't need this much water. We'll just grab the pieces from inside this water tank and use it to shim up the degraded pieces on the fuel tank. Alternately, we could say, you broke it, you stand there, and you baby that thing until it works 24/7 until we get back to dock. Or we could say, well, we don't actually need to go anywhere. We'll just sit here forever with no engines. Sounds good. So what we're going to want to do is come up with the ability for us to have a prompt, a pop-up prompt when we click on someone, or a room for that matter. So when we click here and they say, I broke the maneuvering jet clone, we want to have a couple of options, like they'll say, this is how I might fix the maneuvering jet. You let me fix it. I'll go in and, break another maneuvering jet or whatever. Or they might say, or we might have an option to say something like, come, follow me. I need you to fix something or baby something. And those can be expanded later into other kinds of results, other kinds of options. Fundamentally, this game is mostly about making people work together. So the idea here is, the original idea is that everything can be solved by dragging one person onto another. And I'm sort of thinking about whether or not that's something that can be dealt with here. Because the primary power of this sort of game is that it is about the people aboard the ship and not just about clicking and choosing from menu items. So in the paper prototype, what you would do is a character would say, okay, well, I can fix it by doing X, but I need Y. And so you'd say, well, follow me, and they'd follow you around, and you could take them to someone that had Y, and it would automatically link up, and that plan would work. This is the same basic idea here, where you can say, okay, well, follow me, and we'll do something. But the question is, how does that work with fixing the part using another part? So if you drag them onto the part, or they follow you and you click on the part, that could mean that you want them to baby the part, or it could mean that you want them to repair the part. And there's not really any evidence, of what sort of options there might be. All right, well, the click and drag stuff is just a UI issue. What we're going to want to do is come up with the ability to choose different parts, different options. So I think right now the idea that's forming in my head is if you drag them to a broken part, they'll baby it. If you want them to repair the part, they'll have told you what they can use to repair it. So you drag them onto that repairable part. They sacrifice that part, and then they fix the engine. And of course, you can do a whole bunch of other stuff, dragging them into rooms or onto people. That's in the future. For right now, we need a pop-up that tells us what's going on. And now this here is temporary. these probably won't be there in the full version, because in the full version, you would be mostly in the ship. You'd be very close to the ship. You'd be able to see each of the individuals much closer than this. This is like a super long shot. But we'll get to that later. For now, we'll want to build some kind of menuing system. So when you click on someone, it'll pop up with a text box and a bunch of stuff that it wants to say. Now that text box and stuff, and then below that there will be there'll be a follow me option or a couple of plans or something similar. So we're going to build that. We'll go ahead and put in a new, I guess canvas might be easiest. Otherwise we'll have to try and put it on a canvas. And then so this canvas will be our crew talk box. With the idea being that it will pop up somewhere and give you options. So there are a couple of different approaches here. One approach is everyone can have their own crew talk box. So when you click on them, you know, dialogue box, old Neverwinter Nights style or whatever, and they say, "Greetings, I am, you know, Alice Zorro, and I have these things to say. Please choose from these responses." But there are other options, and the option I like best at the moment is the idea of it being a chat box off on the side of the screen, on the right side of the screen. And what happens is you are... sorry, trying to choose the right slider here. What happens is when you click on someone, they just show up in chat. So it's like, bloop, bloop. The problem with this is if they have options and you want to be able to choose from the options, how do you present those in a chat window? I think that would be within the pop-up. You know, the chat box element has to have the ability to put more lines in. So that's what we're going to build. Inside this whole thing is going to be a vertical scrolling element for our chat box system. But within that, we're going to have chat boxes, and the chat boxes have a vertical size determined by the number of lines of whatever, whether it's text or buttons. Famalsbeer says, "Good evening. Nice to see you back online." Yep. I don't know what was wrong on Sunday, but my computer was actually really screwed up, turned out. So maybe it was my computer's fault. I punched Windows until it begged for mercy, and now my computer works again and Twitch works again, so who knows. So in order to make this our talk box, we're going to need to put in another UI element inside of it, which is going to be... so I'm trying to figure out the best way to do this. So the problem with using a mask element is that it will only mask the borders that you've specified. So if we mask the entire panel, then we'll see things up to the edge of the panel. If we want to have a border where things don't get seen, we have to use this as the mask. So this will be our mask. And anything within this will be on our chat box. It's also going to be a scrollable, a scroll rack. There it is. No horizontal scrolling, but vertical scrolling. That seems good. And we're going to want to have a content size fitter. Nope, no content size fitter on this one. It is the size it is, and that is that. So let's specify that this is the viewport. And it is also the content. Yeah, that should be working. That should be correct, I think. So let's go ahead and call this content. And we will call this chat sidebar. Obviously, we're just blocking it out at this stage. We're not actually, this is not what it's going to look like in the long run. We're going to use all sorts of cool, well, we might as well change out for some cool effects now, right? We've already got the files. Why not use them? Cool being a relative term, of course. Here, chop back. Pretty standard approach. It doesn't look too bad, so that's what we'll use. There we go. Spacey. Ooh. Let's change some of the coloration, though. This will have to be completely opaque, and we'll make it a light blue to give it sort of a... Oh, that's a sidebar. My bad. I meant to make the content that color. Here we go. And then the chat sidebar in the back there, that's going to be a different color. I'm thinking about making it partially transparent and a much darker faded shade of blue, just to make it a nice ring. That might be a little too faded. Let's punch it up a little bit. Yeah, there we go. And we could do all sorts of holographic effects and stuff, and in the long run we might. But for now, we're going to go ahead and leave it like this. It should work. Now, because the content is its own thing, we can put like a header up here that says, you know, chat room, and has like an X or whatever. We'll get to that later if we need it. For now, we're going to need to create the internals, so panel. We're going to go ahead and make this a layout element. Boom. And we're going to have it with, do we need it as a layout element? I don't think we do, actually. We're going to have it be a content size fitter, like so, with our vertical fit being preferred size. And we're also going to have it as a vertical layout group. No, do we want this as a vertical layout group? Yeah, we do. Thinking about how many layers we might want, you know? So it's like a 5, 5, 5, 5, 5. And right now, we seem to be stuck in the middle, which is not where we want to be. It's kind of odd. Why did it stick us in the middle? Interesting. Because we should pop up at the top. Why are we in the middle? Oh, do we need to have a layout element specifically to allow us to show up properly? Yeah, I think that's what it is. So the layout element will just go ahead and say whatever. Do whatever you want. We don't care. But it doesn't seem to be working. I'm not sure what's going on here. Let's go ahead and put in a sub-object, because we're going to need several. The first one is going to be a image, and this will be the face. So face. That looks fine. So that creates a 100 by 100 panel object there. But this is actually going to have to be a canvas layout element that ignores the layout. Because the face is not part of the flow of the conversation. Either that or it's the first part of the conversation and has like their name and stuff. That might be better. Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. So this will be a panel after all. So we'll call this the portrait panel. And the portrait panel will have the face inside of it. The face inside of it does not need a layout element. It's just a good old face. And the portrait panel does need a layout element with a preferred height of 100. That said, it doesn't appear to be working. There's something going on here. Unity changed the way that these worked. I haven't updated to the newest version of Unity yet, but Unity changed the way these worked back in 5.3, I think, and they've always been a little bit finicky since then. Like, did I screw up somewhere? Because this content doesn't have a vertical scroll. There's the problem. Always include the pieces that you're trying to include. Just, you know, as obvious as that should be. But we want this to be wide but not tall. We'll have to go ahead and try this here. So this panel doesn't actually have the right size to it, which is odd. Okay, so right now it has the size of -100 or something. I'm not sure what's going on here. So if we include just a regular old image, it works. What doesn't work is when we try to make it a portrait panel UI element. That's strange. So if we duplicate this image, okay, it's not actually working. I lied. So this image can be at 0, 1, like so. 0, 0. Just fill in. Okay, so screwy. It's probably one of these buttons, right? So this is the panel right here. The problem is this panel isn't actually scaling properly to fit the things within it. Why is this not working for me? I did this 100 times in the past couple of years, but for some reason something changed and it no longer seems to work. So the horizontal fit is unconstrained. That's fine. Our content shouldn't be fitting that. The vertical fit is the preferred size, right? So I guess the image doesn't have a preferred size. Is that what's going on? Let's go ahead and try it. No, that's a canvas. Maybe I will... That's a particle system. Maybe I'd be better off doing Blender stuff instead. Panel, there we are. So we're going to have a content size fitter. No, it's a layout element with a preferred height of 50. Right? This has a layout element content size fitter with a preferred size. So why is it not taking? And as you can see, they stack on top of each other rather than stacking vertically, because this doesn't have a vertical size, a vertical layout group. Is this the problem? That it just doesn't have a vertical layout group? Okay, so the content needs to have a vertical layout group. Good. The individual content has to have a vertical layout group. Good. And the individual panels also need a vertical layout group. Okay. Okay, I don't know what's going on, but apparently the defaults changed so that child control size, I don't even know what that is. It doesn't make very much sense to me. Maybe it means that child controls its own size? I don't know. Well, either way, those default to off and they have to be on. That's the problem I was having. No biggie, just me being not smart enough. So we're going to call this a chat box. And we're going to call this profile. And what we're going to do with the profile is we're going to put in an image that will be our character's, yes, the particle system. That's exactly what we want to put in there. Actually, the reason I screwed up there is it has to be a raw image, because we're going to be putting in a renderable, a texture that is part of our. We're using it right now for our portraits, but it's going to be up here instead, or in addition, or whatever. So this is going to be our portrait. And we're also going to need to put in some text and stuff. So we'll call this name McNamington, and we'll make it bold, and that should do. We'll want to change it to a darker shade. All right, so now we can call this name, and we'll duplicate it, and we'll call this one something that's a little bit more generic, like desk or whatever. This might be where I put the buttons. I haven't decided yet. We'll have to work it out, see whether it's like that. Stuff goes here and says stuff down here as well. Do we want one line or two? One line is probably fine. One line description. And we'll just, there we are, perfect. Now the profile, we'll go ahead and give it the same cute little image, because that way it'll fit in nicely with the edge here. See that? So that'll be good. So the chat box itself has an image attached to it. It's not one we actually want to see though, so we'll go ahead and get rid of it. There we go. So that's actually, we do want to see that. Never mind, I was wrong. This also needs to be something we can see. I'm thinking in my head, and you guys obviously cannot see what the heck I am thinking. Strange that. Oh, I got a phone call. I bet it's spam. Hello. Oh, I've got on someone's spam list. Jeez. Malsbeer says, what resolutions aspect ratios are you planning to support in the final game? Don't know. Most of this stuff is made with the concept that it's a scrollable thing, so I can massage it, and if it doesn't work right, you'll be able to scroll it. But right now, this is all programmer crap, so I wouldn't be surprised if all of this stuff needs to be changed in the long run. I don't have a problem with making UI. It's just that when you're trying to make UI and the rest of the systems at the same time, it's quite hard. So this is roughly right. And we are going to take a look here. Portrait. Yeah, that's our profile. And then within the profile, I mean, rather than just the profile, there's also going to be a line of text. The line of text is a lot simpler because it's intended to be like, you know, the place where what you say actually shows up. So we're not going to be showing a bubble around that. But we should have the chat box showing us a... Oh, I did never turn it back on. There we are. So because the chat box has zero padding, we have to add some. It's a little bit weird to not have any. Zero spacing there is fine. Our profile has apparently been linked to the middle and not to the left, which is a weird choice and makes no sense. So we're going to go ahead and move everything to the right. A couple of steps here. Excuse me, sorry. So, this line of text is going to have a content size fitter. Woohoo! Let's have an infinite number of content size fitters with a vertical fit of preferred size. Now, the reason for that is... Okay, so that didn't work. Apparently, I can't miss them. Darn it. So what I was trying to do is get this to expand based on the size of the text. But it looks like while content size fitters can be chained, content size fitters cannot be chained with layout elements. That's a shame. Oh well, we can live without it. Hi, I wanted to say blah blah, but blah de blah blah. Blah. And then I don't know how to actually put emojis in. Emoji, emoji, emoji. And you can see it's not quite big enough, so we're going to go ahead and change it to be 40 high. Alternately, we can reduce the size of the font from 14 to 12. But I don't know, that might be too small to read. What do you guys think in terms of, well, we'll go ahead and leave it like this for now. We can change it later. It's going to be a prefab. It's going to be easy to change, so we're not too worried. We'll go ahead and scale this back down to 30. So we want this to be inside of a bubble. Unfortunately, we do not have anything that even resembles a speech bubble here. We just never needed one, so we never created one. For now, we can use a flipped garback, so that's what we'll do. So UI, image, There we go. And then rotation or scale. -1. That's -41. That's -1. And our image will be a negative Garback. Hello? Hello? That was weird. Like that. That at least vaguely gives the impression that it is part of our conversation, like it's pointing in the vague right direction. We're going to want to replace that with something more interesting later, but for now it's okay. We're not too concerned. All right, so that is surprisingly half transparent. It does not look half transparent. Ah, no, it's not. There we are. There we are. Perfect. And we're going to go up here to the profile and change this color to a much more striking one like this. We may eventually make it the color of the character because every character has a color, but this should work for now. We're going to go back down to the lineup. My Unity has been suddenly got stuck just now, a second ago, got stuck in look mode, and there is no way to break it out of look mode, so we're gonna have to go and save the game and then close and reload Unity. Isn't that great? That's exactly what you want to spend all your time doing while you are streaming. I think it's in here. Yeah, there it is. If anybody knows how to get out of that permanent look mode glitch, let me know. It's happened a couple of times now, and I've never found a way. One time I spent like a good 5 minutes just randomly trying stuff. So Fmalsbeer's comment on the way that it is, you know, it's got a different resolutions for different things in this game. That's always been a really important and dangerous part of programming for the PC, because obviously people have radically different specs and they view things in radically different form factors. This is especially true if you plan to be on mobile in any way. So I haven't had to release a game on anything other than desktop, so generally speaking, I'm going with the idea that most people are going to have monitors that are fairly large and are like 4:3 or wider. And that's generally the only thing I care about. So I'll have the whole thing scaled, based mostly on your overall screen shape. But that's just a theory. Can't guarantee that yet. So this is, I'm going to shrink it down considerably here, like this. There. And in the long run, we'll replace that with something else. All right, so the idea here is that we can add in any number of these lines of text. And we can also add in anything else we want. For example, we might be able to put in a line which is not a line of text, but is instead a query. And this will be the same basic idea here, but we're going to go ahead and unreverse this. So it's like this. And then we will move it to the left rather than the right. So 0 and 25. Up. Like that. And we will change the color from white to some kind of gold, like this. It's not really very gold. It's more of a peach. It's fine. We're just blocking it out at the moment, so we don't really care. And then what we'll do is we will have buttons in here. There are a couple of ways to do this, but the easiest way is to have a new panel element in here, which we won't show the actual panel of, and have it be a horizontal layout group. There we go. And with this in mind, we can add buttons into this horizontal layout group, and hopefully the player will be able to select from them. Now, if we want the player to be able to scroll through multiple layers of buttons, what we can do is we can make this a scroll rect and a mask as well. And we'll have to figure all this out later. But all of this stuff is just basic blocking out. Changing it out later is pretty easy as long as you leave your code nice and loose. So we're not going to be too concerned if this isn't exactly the way we want it to be. But do name things so that you never get too confused. And then we'll create a button. Button. And we'll go ahead and add in a layout element. Like so. Yeah, that's fine. And then, of course, if we wanted to, see, more buttons. Obviously, these buttons are a little bit on the big side. So what we're going to do is we're going to make them have a preferred width of 80. And then over here on the button list, there we are. What a weird situation. We're going to go ahead and put in extra margin on the top and the bottom, like that, just so that it feels a little bit better. Maybe even on the left and the right as well. There we are. And now the buttons seem more right. And you can see that now they squash rather than stretch. If we wanted to have a scroll group where we could scale it, we would actually need to have a scroll rect separate from the content stretched object. So let's get rid of the scroll rect. We don't need it in this case. We'll have to work out later. There are some optimizations we're going to have to do. But I'm not too concerned. So the more buttons you add, the more squashed they get, and that should be fine. So the idea here is that this will pop up when you click on a character. So when we grind. Good grind. To grind? Hello? Oh, that's right, I restarted it. I was thinking, why is this taking so long? The idea being that when we click on these characters, they'll pop up over here. So when we click, it'll pop up over here. So to do that, we're going to need a couple of kinds of scripts. Scripts. So we'll go down to our scripts area. Here is our avatar scripts. And we're going to want to mix in some new elements for our abilities to talk. We already have like a dialogue balloon and stuff. I think that that's all going to go the way of the dodo, because we're going to go ahead and use the chat system here. And this will be where we stick our new scripts. We'll go ahead and we'll call this one chat controller. And it's going to get put on the actual chat sidebar. Group. Whatever. So this chat controller is going to have some code in it, as you might have expected. Close all others. And we're going to want to make this something which has a couple of things that understands. First off, it's got to understand rect transform content. So this will be our tooltip, the vertical element for all the chat elements. The vertical content element. I forget what they're called. Content group, vertical content group for all the chat elements. And then we're going to want public chat element. We haven't built it yet, so we'll have to build that in a minute. For now, this will do not too badly, but we're going to have a lot of things that we have to build. So we're going to also need a what do we want to call it? A chat element, a chat block. I guess a chat block makes sense. So the chat block is going to be, come on, one person chatting any number of things, any number of lines. So obviously the chat block is going to be our fundamental screen for when people are talking. And we're going to have a lot of things where, you know, there's going to be some time-based stuff where we delay half a second or whatever before the next message pops up. But what we're going to want to do is have this with the understanding that the very first entry in our chat block is one that has unusual features. And in order to fill that out, we've got to know who we're dealing with. So public social brain. Oh, we're not using the right. So using avatar. In fact, this should probably be namespace avatar. Unless we want a new namespace chat box. Let's not overcomplicate it. For now, we'll just leave it right here. Public social brain chatter. And we're going to have a public, that'll be something that we fill in, tooltip filled in automatically. Public image. Okay, so there's no UI in here yet. Let's add the UI in. Public image. What do you want to call it? Yeah, texture person, portrait. I have a public text, name text, desk text. There we go. And now we're going to want to assign that chatter box. So public void init social brain chatterer. I guess that's a better one. This.chatterer equals chatterer. There we go. And that should set that part up, but we also need to get that portrait set up and the name text and the desk text set up. So what are we going to do? Well, our portrait needs to take a render texture from our chatterer. So how do we do that? Well, we say it's a portrait cam. There it is. Portrait cam PC equals chatterer.avatar.portraitCam. Easy enough, right? And then we can say PC dot, and you can see we've got a bunch of random things going on here. And what we're looking for is the final render texture. So here we just say portrait. It's not an image, it's a raw image. My bad, raw image. So we say portrait dot texture equals PC dot render texture. And then we can say if name text, then name text dot text equals chatterer.avatar dot first name plus space plus chatter.avatar dot last name. Or, as we might like to call it, chatter.avatar dot name. But I really want to have this name be a little bit better. So we're going to go ahead. I want to create something new that's not here yet so that to future-proof this. Because first name, last name isn't guaranteed. You're in the future. Science! Hey, pink hair. So what we would like to do is make sure that the names are not as strictly limited as first name, last name. So to do that, we're going to abstract them just a little bit now so that we won't have a lot of rewriting to do later. And the way we're going to do that is where it says first name and last name, we're going to go ahead and have a getter and setter public string. We can call it whatever we want, a human name, for example. Or we could just override the name. So public new or new public string name like this. And we can say return first name plus last name. But I actually don't know whether this will work because this name is a little bit of an oddball in terms of how it's set up, and I'm not 100% sure that that will do it, but we'll give it a shot. If desk text, then desk text.text equals chatting. We'll figure that out later as well. So that should set it up so that when we initialize a chat block, it gives us the character's face and their name. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to set this up so that when we call our chat controller, we're going to want to be able to tell it that there, a person is trying to say something. And Evil Luigi showed up too. Hello, Pink Hair and Evil Luigi have doubled my my watcher count. We are working mostly on UI stuff today. I may do some 3D modeling later. I actually ate something, so I might not get too hungry to go on. Wouldn't that be nice? So we're going to have a chat block here, which is going to be our chat block prefab, like so. Tooltip. make sure you set this. Because basically, we're going to have the option to have this chat controller actually take commands in a rather interesting way. Public static chat controller live, and we're also going to have public static say void say with a user and an array of things to say. So this might be something we have to really change later. So for now, we're just going to take the user, custom avatar, and the thing they say. Using avatar. Except for it's a social brain. Social brain, avatar, and then string text. Evil Luigi says, you don't know much about the Laplace transform, do you? You know, it's been forever since I took it. I took that calculus. So, let me just click on it in Wikipedia. Yeah, we were taught mostly the Fourier transform. I think the Laplace transform was not something I ever had to learn. So no, sorry, I don't. I got some Twitter messages. While I'm over here, I might as well click and see what people have to say. This is all about something else. All right, so well, let's go ahead and try this out here. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to create a new chat block. So we can say chat block. Oh, well, we have to get the live content. So we're actually going to go ahead and say live dot. We can't just say because unfortunately you can't use the same function name as a static and as a non-static. So we'll call it live say, and we'll call it social brain avatar string text. Down here, we'll go ahead and say public void live say social brain avatar string text, and then we'll say chat block CB equals chat block dot instantiate chat block transform chat block prefab rather. Now, as I recall, we're allowed to actually tell it more stuff nowadays, but we don't have to. The chat block needs to get set into... Oh, we can. Look at that. Great. It needs to get set into its new parent location. So we're going to specify the parent, which is the content. And we're also going to tell it to reset its world space. There we go. Much more fast. So Evil Luigi is cursing about the Laplace transform because he doesn't have any sort of heavy-side functionality. Don't really know enough about it to tell you, sorry. Now he hopes it won't be on the test. God, you're all kids. And Famelsbeer says... So for now, we're just going to go ahead and say cb.initAvatar. And this should, in theory, work. Let's find out. So first, we have to actually set this up as a prefab. Won't that be fun? So to do that, we're going to want our chat box to have the chat block. We can move it up so that it's near the top. Interesting, though. Error. Oh, idiot. Try typing in C# next time. All right, so the profile is the one that's going to be there for starters. So we're going to drop this in. We're going to drop a portrait in. Oh, we already did that. And the name in. And the desk in. There we are. And then we will save this, at least temporarily, to our prefabs. Do we save it to the social, I wonder? No, it's going to have to be prefabs, right? So this will be our chat box. Good. We'll delete it out of there. Our crew talk box is going to have the content be the content, and the chat block prefab be the chat blocks. And then we're going to go ahead and make sure that live works, because I forgot to make that work. So public void awake live equals this. All right, so that should work, but right now we don't have it so that it ever says anything. Well, that's not a big problem because over here on say, we have the ability to have it say whatever we want. Now we are passing social brains, not custom avatars. And the reason for that will become clear in the long run, but that's fine. We'll just pass it the social brain because we have it linked pretty easily here. So here is the local say. We're actually going to override the overall say at the moment. So hi, overridden. Leave this out for the moment. And up here we'll go ahead and put in this and we'll say temporarily not available. And then here we'll go ahead and say chat block, oh, sorry, chat controller dot say, and then we'll pass it our social brain and our text. Like so. All right. Got some nice sirens in the background. Okay, so if we wait until we have a mistake here, boom, boom, there we are. You can see that it said a lot of stuff here. Now, obviously, this part where it says, hi, I just wanted to say blah, 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 those are all built in. We don't have any actual text happening yet, but you can see that it says Bob Zorro, and it shows the face. And it shows the face, and it shows the face, and it shows the face. So that's working great. What we have is a problem here. Our content and our scrollable rect are the same object, and that's not going to fly. So we're going to need to fix that. This this scroll rect can't be here. Boom, it has to be here. Content, this. Viewport, this. The other thing worth noting is that this vertical layout group, we don't have a content size fitter, so it tried to lock our content size down. We're going to need a content size fitter where our vertical fit is preferred size. But you can see that that screws up our placement within the frame of the image. So hopefully this will work. Let's find out. Well, no, it didn't. So if we drop content chat boxes in here, this works. So does it break down with 3 of them? No. I guess this also needs to be the mask, at least for the moment. So this worked. Oh, well, don't do that. This worked, but the problem is that it didn't work. Oh, this is inside the chat box. That's not the same thing at all. So what we want to do is add more chat boxes to the content, like this. Oh, well, that wasn't... You gotta get fingers working there. Yeah, so this worked. So if we take a look here... Grind, grind, grind. See how this works? But when we add more lines, due to stressing out, okay, so now that works as well. Except it didn't stretch any. You can see how that's not stretching. So it got added on, but it didn't recalculate the size of the container. So if we take a look here, let's go ahead and just for temporarily sake, disable the mask. And you can see that this goes down quite a ways. The content is, according to this, going down to there and then stopping. This is obviously not what we want the content to do. the content should stretch, and it has a content size fitter specifically to allow it to do so. Am I misunderstanding something? Did I forget how vertical layouts and content size fitters actually function? Because the content size fitter should be functioning right now. It says that it should be driven by the layout group, so maybe that's a mistake in general, do you think? Let's go ahead and try that again without this content size fitter. Smallsbeer says, can't wait to get back into a Unity project, currently stuck on an Unreal Engine project. They're both pretty good compared to the olden days. Wow, when I had to work with things like Torque 2D and Torque 3D. So it looks the same. Even though there's no more content size fitter, it ended up not scaling the content at all. So if we delete these chat boxes, kaboom, and we take a look at the content, what size is it? It's the same size. It's not scaling at all. I must have mistaken something here. Hold on. Content size fitter, vertical layout group, Unity. I followed the Unity tutorial on scrolling menus at runtime. It says that it already has a layout group. This warning makes sense to me. You should set this up with the content size fitter component, the vertical layer component with the same object. Scroll rect object, scroll container, content size fitter, and vertical layout. So they suggest that despite the warning, this is the right way to do it. And you can see that that works, except for in play mode, it stopped working. I have a sneaking suspicion that upgrading to Unity 5.6, is that what just got released, would fix this. Because this feels a lot like a bug to me. I don't see any reason why it wouldn't work. Hello? Oh, I wasn't clicked on it. Pink Hair says, I thought they only affected children. Sorry, that's much too vague for me to understand what you're trying to say. Content size fitter is intended to increase the size of the parent to fit the size of the children. In order to do that, the children need to have a layout group or a layout element on them so that they can tell the parent how big they are. Now, what we've got here is another content size fitter, and my theory is that in play mode, the content size fitter doesn't work right. Because what we really should have here is a situation where this is causing the parent to grow to the right size, and that happens when it's not in play mode. It happens when it's in editing mode just fine, but when I hit play, it breaks, and that almost always means that there's something really stupid going on. Okay, so look, I just pressed Control-Z and play and pause, and now it works. So there's something very, very stupid is going on here. So I'm doing it right. But the problem is that the game isn't refreshing the content size fitter on the parent. So if we do this one more time, there we go. The content size fitter is not getting triggered. However, last time I did some stuff to tweak it. I just toggled the content size fitter on the children. Well, I can toggle the content size fitter on the children. We'll see whether or not that works. The problem is that turning off the content size fitter on the children means that the text inside the box won't cause it to expand anymore, which is obviously a no-go. So I think what's happening is the content size on the children is firing after the content size on the parent, which in turn means that the parent gets a height of 0, whereas the content size on the children goes, oh, now that the parent knows that we're a 0 height, I'll go and figure out what height we actually are. Which means that in order to get the parent to work right, what I have to do is toggle the children's content size fitter or just dirty it. They just have to mark it dirty. So public void start. Mark dirty. How do you mark something dirty? I need to mark a layout dirty. So rect transform. If we were to go and say rect transform t dot, is there a mark dirty? Has changed. Workaround for content size fitter firing in the wrong order. This shouldn't be necessary. Chances are pretty good that in the new version of Unity this isn't a problem. We will see though. Boom. That did not work. Oh, it might be that the transform isn't the rect transform. They might be different. Okay, there's something. Today has been full of struggling to get this stuff to work. Stuff that used to work fine, and now I'm like, oh, who did you? The problem is that this should be something that's fairly simple. I mean, nested lists are not like really complicated. These are things that people have been able to do since 1981. So it bothers me that Unity has made it so hard. I can only hope that it was just an accident. So what we've got here is we're trying to tell it that this is not working, and it doesn't seem to be triggering properly. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and turn off our child, what's it called? Content size fitter. We'll see what this does. Boom, 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 boom. Oh, that didn't work. So it looks like the content size fitter might be firing after start. Like it might not even be, it might not even be ready by the time the object starts. I would have thought the content size fitter would have tried to work its way on awake, not on start. Well, there are a couple more options to try here. So wait a second, did that work? That worked. Guys, that worked! Let's try that again, because I was actually looking over at Pink Hair's message about Unity doing things back-asswards, in a literal sense. Guys, that is the dumbest way to fix something, just so you're aware. Alright, so the next step is to take one of these chat box elements and make this text line something we can add in. So we're going to go ahead and call this a chat box line. And then we're going to dump it into our prefabs like so. And we're going to go over into our... Smallsbeer says it looks broken or at least unintended. I guarantee you that it's just a bug that they didn't catch in this version of Unity. That's why it probably is fixed in the next version of Unity. Obviously, you should do the dependents. You should do the ones that, if you depend on something, calculate out the thing you depend on first. Duh, right? Whatever. So what we're going to need here is a game object. So public game object, text prefab line, text line prefab. There we are. And what we'll do is we will have a function to add it in. So public void text line prefab, or say string line. We'll go ahead and do the, well, let's go ahead and fix this up just a little bit here. So protected content size fitter, content size fitter. If not content size fitter, then content size fitter equals blah. If content size fitter dot enabled, then turn it off. And pink hair has a computer shitting out spaghetti code. Sorry, I don't know of any way to fix this other than fixing it. What I'll do is I will go back through and make sure that it, I'll put in some notes here. To do test to see if this bug still exists in 5.6 plus. If not, definitely remove the content size fitter toggling, because that's the only reason it exists. So the reason that we're trying to get this to work is because I have to turn it on again in order to say something. So what we're going to say is game object g equals instantiate, or game object dot instantiate text line prefab. We're going to want to put this text line prefab into our content. We do not yet have a content prefab to set it in though, so we're going to go ahead and put that in right here. Public transform. Oh, we already do actually. It's the base object. So there we are. And then we can say text t equals g dot get component text if t dot text equals line, else debug dot log warning no text box in prefab text line prefab dot name. And we'll get a nice error message if we try and instantiate an empty prefab, so that's fine there. We don't have to worry about a special case. That should work. Now this is obviously all not going to be what we want in the long run, because we're going to have to do things like clear out elements and stuff, but for now it'll work fine. Oh, I forgot to save it and a couple of other details. So this chat box line, it's already saved properly. Good, good. Let's delete all this stuff. The chat box will need to have its chat blockiness fixed, so move up. The text line prefab, here it is. Save and press play. So now they should say that thing about what they broke over here in the chat window. Did I leave something in there? I think I left something in there on accident. There we are. I didn't save the fixed chat box, so try it again with the fixed chat box. Now this chat box is probably going to be errored just because it's nonsense, but the rest of these should work. Boom. No, I don't see any. Oh. Always remember to plug your code in. Chat controller.say. So here we have this live say. we forgot to actually tell it to say it. So cb.say text. Not the best way to hold a conversation, but it should work. We'll work on this in far more detail later. By the way, I've been making cool things in Kerbal, and I wonder whether or not it would be worth, having videos about that. Aha. So here it says, I wanted to say blah, 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 emoji, 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 rather than actually having things to say. No text box in prefab chat box line. Well, what's this? Oh. There we go. So here we see that they all have things to say. They broke the water tank, they broke the heavy ion thruster, they broke the radio dish, and we can fuss with this. So the idea here is that these buttons will pop up belowhand and give us options as to what we want to do. And obviously the three basic options are to repair it with something or otherwise. Here's the basic idea here. Right now we have a list of buttons, but I think that a better option would be to have text boxes that have the option to click on them. So rather than clicking on button 1, button 2, button 3, they would say, how about I fix this with, by scrapping one of our other parts. And then that has like an OK checkbox that you can click. And if you click on that, then that's what they'll do. That seems to me to make more sense because it allows them to describe the situation fully and offer an arbitrary number of options, each of which has details so that you can actually see what you're doing. So we need a chat box line that also has the ability to be selected. You know what, though? I'm kind of sick of doing this, so I'm not going to do it. Not unless everyone wants me to. I only have a couple of viewers, so I don't think that anybody's going to care if I go and do some 3D modeling instead. What do you guys think? Is it okay if I go do some 3D modeling and take a break from this half-broken UI for a while? Well, until you guys tell me one way or the other, I'm going to go do some 3D modeling. Fmalsbeer says, do whatever you want. That sounds fine. So what we're doing today is the Aeroskip T1 Corvette, which I've done a couple of different takes on trying to get it to work. Corvettes are the smallest class of ship, and this is intended to be an SSTO category. It's not, you don't have to build SSTOs out of it, but the idea is that this is something that you take off of the ground. So it's got quite a narrow set of halls and stuff like that. If we look at the setup here, this is a basic room. And if you look inside to see what's inside of our basic room, you can see how it's set up with just a really, really narrow hall and a door and a room. So this is intended to be a fairly small, tight little situation. Because unlike, most of the time, spaceships are spaceships are cheap. The biggest load, the biggest difficulty with a spaceship is the actual cargo. So fuel, food, air, those things have the massive amount of weight. Similarly, after that you have the heavy machinery that is required, like thrusters and docking ports and sensors and stuff like that. After that comes the cost of another meter of hull or whatever. So in general, spaceships can be built fairly spaciously unless they have to be launched from the planet. Because if you're passing through the atmosphere, space becomes a concern. So that's why the T1 aeroskips here are very, very small and cramped, because they're flying through the atmosphere, and therefore they don't want to have any extra cross section. They don't want to have any extra drag. At least that's the theory. But keep in mind that having a larger amount of open space on your ship does not increase the amount of air on your ship, because if it wasn't in your your large habitation area, it would just be in a tank. It's the same amount of mass either way. So really, the only savings for making ships small and cramped is if you're passing through the atmosphere, or if you need to save that extra kilogram of wall. Yeah, so this is a fun little ship for me, because it's been a while since I've tried to design a cramped ship. So this ship also has a couple of methods of trying to hide the straightness of it. I've got these wall segments which have a number of cool little shape keys, and that allows you to build these segments out to try and hide the egregious straightness of your ship. And that should be fun. It's all the first time I'm experimenting with shape-keyed armor. Pinkhair says there are the considerations of balance. Well, I mean, sure, but you can create a balanced big ship and a balanced small ship. So I'm not too concerned about, about that. So the cockpit for the T1 Corvettes, I want it to be a nice big front window. And I've sort of mocked out this front window here, but I haven't really put any thought into it. I created some mock-ups. There are several older versions of this with other sorts of files. Yeah, the shape-keyed armor might be a little bit pricey, though. That's what I'm thinking. I'm going to have to think about the best way to do it. So here was the initial take, and you can see how egregiously straight everything feels. So we're going to have to deal with that. We're making it not as straight this time with a couple of measures. But this is the cockpit I created, and I like this window shape, and I think I'm going to go ahead and use it again. So I just opened it up in the background so that I can just have it as a reference. I'm going to pull it off to the other screen. You won't be able to see it, but I'll be able to see it fine. And then we got this guy here. So a couple of characteristics of this. It is not as... it doesn't look like this, basically. The main characteristic is it's not anything like this. So let's go ahead and start to model in our new front panel. Why are you back there? There we are. So, the original version that I made had a lovely teardrop shape to it that I think helped a lot, and so that's what we're going to aim for. So basically, if we turn this to enabled or connected, we'll be able to drag it into any shape we want, which will allow us to reshape the exact size and shape of this front window. Now the problem with this is that a tilted front window is fundamentally not going to be easy to work with in terms of how it's bowed out. This is a circular window, so what sort of cross-section do you expect to see? Well, if it's supposed to be like a bubble, then that's fine, but if I were to have this part, for example, bow upwards, like this, then how does your bubble work? It's not like a three-dimensional bubble or something. It's not going to be nearly as easy to work with. So the old version, I did have it do this, and then I had it bubble out, and that actually ended up being very complex to try and sculpt, and it looked weird. But on the other hand, it feels fairly realistic to have it like that. So obviously this is a very pretty shape. I can even modify it a little bit more like this. And that is really tempting. The alternative of just leaving it flat would allow me to shape the front of the window more aggressively, but would require that it end up being like a flat shape, obviously. So what we're going to do is try to do it with a curve to it. Just because I think that that's probably the best shape overall for us. This is all there. And then we can try to create the face of this window. Flip that direction around. But you can see that that ends up feeling a little bit forced. Pinker says you could do both and dome it. Let's try it. So if instead of creating a circle, we create a UV sphere, we have a lot of options as to exactly how we want to set this up. 32 segments and 16 rings is fine because we can always reduce those. So if we were to set it up like this, well, obviously we can just do away with the lower half here, like say that. And then we're left with this, right? Which is obviously too bowed out. So let's just squash it down and then scale it up and then rotate it like this. I'm going to delete this line here. There we are. All right, so now let's go ahead and shape it into that teardrop shape I like. All right, now if I tell it to be smooth, I have a crease down the middle, but I think that's my fault. Let's delete half of it. Oh, I have a crease down the middle because I don't have clipping turned on. So we'll tell this to be a smooth face and just take a look here. So there's not really a crease there. So that should work. It's a little bit creasy just due to the fact that I pulled it out into a teardrop. But it's not too bad. If we were to grab it, say, here and here, and pull it up, that's when it gets creasy because the middle doesn't get pulled up as much. So if we were to grab it as a swath, yeah, that preserves its non-creasiness. However, I think I want to actually pull this whole center down like that. Can I bring this in? I can fix a dimple in the center by converting those triangles into quads. Yeah, I'm not too concerned about fixing the dimple in the center, but that's a good thing to know. Now that I'm thinking about it, converting these into quads is just a matter of deleting every other line, isn't it? I can just do this. So there's no reason not to. Oh, dissolve. All right, so if that is going to be the shape of our glass, I'm not 100% sold on it yet. It just doesn't feel as sharp as the other shape I had. The other shape felt right, and this doesn't. So let's go ahead and try it with our just the circle again. Why do I not have the option to create anything? Oh, there it is. Idiot. So the circle is a very powerful shape on its own, and I think the problem was that I put in too much of the third dimension, because I don't really want very much pop to the top. I want it to feel like this teardrop is the reason it exists. If I scale this inward slightly on the x-axis only, like that. You know, I think that shape is probably exactly what I want. Just this shape here. The only question is what I want to do about filling it in. Now in the past, I tried the circle, but I think in this case I'm going to go ahead and build my own pseudo circle. Now in the first version, what I did is I plated across it, just with a standard shape. I'm going to go one layer deeper before I do that in this case, though. There we are. And then what you can do for an easy fix is this. Bridge edge loops, and you can just staple them on like this. Oop, missed. Come on. Oh, well, that's not going to be of any use. We're going to be deleting half of it, so I have to make sure that there's a line down the middle at all times. So with that in mind, we can move this into the right spot for our ship. And the flatness is the real problem here. But if I were to turn on this proportional editing again, and just grab a couple of layers and try and pull it up. That actually feels pretty good in terms of the basic shape. There are some weird dimples, which might just be artifacts of how I adjusted the size of this thing. I might have to like try and figure out how to reduce them. Yeah, for some reason this is a lot above the rest of these objects. I'm not sure why. I can massage that later. What happens if I just hit smooth? Oh, it undoes the circleness. I don't want that. Well, this is good enough for a placeholder at least. Let's go ahead and delete half of it. Kaboom. And you can see that up here I've also got a crease. So this area is, for some reason, unusually depressed. Let's go ahead and just kill off these objects entirely. And start again with this just set up here. Flip direction. There we are. Just pull it a little bit out like that. And then again. Pull it a little bit out. And as we did before, we can just hammer all of this stuff across on the x-axis. We could also do the y-axis, I guess. I'm trying to think of the way that it would look best. That's R, not E. There's E. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. And we can smooth it. Alright, so that actually doesn't look too bad. There's still noticeable dents left over just due to the idiosyncrasies of the curve squashing down into the center. This would be fixed if I was doing it with a proper sphere. Or have, part of a sphere like I was trying to do before. But that would also be annoying. So we're not going to. What we will do is take all of these center points and smooth them. And we'll see what this happens. What does this do? Hopefully that will remove some of the bumpiness. It's still a little bit bumpy. Well, we'll work with that later if we have to. Overall, this shape is not bad. It's not exactly the same shape that I had before, which was this shape. There's something about this shape I really like. You know what? Copy. Paste. Let's see what you've got, old cockpit. So this is how it looked. Oh, it's more of an oval. So the problem with the old cockpit, as opposed to the new setting, is everything other than that window is kind of crap. I like the way this rolls around it and comes up with these heavy prongs, but everything else down here and around on this window, it's all crap. So if we were to take all of the stuff down below and just delete it. Pink Air says, look at it head on. What are we looking at here? You talking about the other one, or which one are we talking about? Pink Hair is a better modeler than I am, so I'm definitely listening to his advice. I just don't understand it. Sorry. The old one. I was just curious how the front view of the window would be. Oh, okay. Let me go ahead and pull up the actual file here and switch it over into render mode. And we can actually look into the cockpit. I'll hide this, and then we can look into the cockpit. So you can see that it has a pretty good front view. Now the side view, which is mostly important for things like taxiing, is available down through these windows. So you can actually see straight down to the ground with this nice deep cut. And that was the theory behind the old setup. But I don't like how the side windows ended up looking. And in case you're wondering whether or not those side windows actually function, we can go in via F mode. What the hell? F! Is it not F? Oh, it's Shift F, sorry. And you can see that they're not lined up quite right. That's one of the reasons I didn't really want them. So what I was going to think about doing is making these into some other shape. Maybe just a low circle or something like that. I hadn't really figured it out yet. The main issue Pink Hair sees is the lack of peripheral vision. Yep, that's exactly the problem. I'm not sure whether or not I want to see peripheral vision, as you know, as this is not a this is not a ship that should be having anything on its periphery. Its primary concerns are getting into space and being parked on the ground. So that's why I have, like, I really want to be able to see the ground beneath my nose so that I can drive a little bit. But when you're going into space, there's going to be a lot of superheating. There's going to be a lot of thermal burn coming back. And I didn't want... I wanted a cockpit that felt like it was taking that into account. I wanted a cockpit that felt like it could take the heat. I don't know whether I succeeded or not. I guess that's sort of up to you. But how would you make it so that the peripheral vision would feel good in this sort of setup? I really like this circular feel, this organic shape to it. And that's kind of the shape I'm going to try and give to the rest of the ship, despite the fact that it's a very straight ship. So I definitely am curious about your opinions. Pinker says, have you considered having it upside down? Well, let's take a look at it. Now, the reason that I was against this basic idea is when you're re-entering the atmosphere, you come in at about 40 degrees, and you basically burn your ass off. If you had it upside down like this, then you are going to have windows that can take re-entry heating. But another option is you could have it have a different mode when it's in space. It could re-enter upside down. And it could just be while re-entering. That's the only time that it is, you know, it's in this format while re-entering only, and otherwise it's upside down. In that case, all of the armor would be on the top of the ship. That's actually kind of an interesting idea. Yeah, pink hair, when you say that is the no sloping upward, that's this, right? It's hard to tell because I'm a couple of seconds ahead of you, so sometimes it's a little bit difficult to tell what's going on. So if the armor was on top of the ship rather than on the bottom, then all of these armor plates... rotate Y 180. I buy it. I buy it. As a conceit goes, I am liking this idea more and more. Having the armor on the top of the ship makes a lot of sense in almost every situation aside from re-entry. Re-entry is the only time that you'd want your ship to have its armor on its bottom. Like, unless you're a dropship for some reason, like you're dropping off something dangerous, and that's never going to be the case. Having the armor on the top, or at least having the option of having the armor on the top, gives it a very different line. And the top of the ship is what people's eyes are generally drawn to, not the bottom. So deviating the top of the ship has a greater effect than deviating the bottom of the ship. So just to show you what I'm talking about, let's go ahead and hide this guy. This shape here that you see how distinct that is? But if we grab all of these and then we rotate them back to the way they were before, come on. It feels a lot less distinct because the bottom of the ship isn't as notable, at least not to my eye, as the top of the ship. I think I like this idea, pink hair. I think that it is a good one. We can make it slope up rather than sloping down. So if we were to rotate Y 180 here, I think that that's the wrong curve for being upside down. So we're going to go ahead and stick that over to the side and think about it for a second on our own. Let's go ahead and build the framework before we try and put the shield in. We're going to want the same sort of graceful curve, the organic feeling curve, which is going to require us to use a circle. But I have to take into account the fact that you're going to have upside down seats while you are in re-entry. And obviously you're not going to want to actually be upside down. That would, blood would rush to your head and that would be really uncomfortable. So your seats are probably going to have to be movable. That's not too bad though. We can work that out later. We're just going to block out the insides, or the outsides for now. So if we put in a circle like this, and we drag it forward, what we can do is we can start to build our overall slope for how this is going to look, the outer curve. So the basic idea is that we delete this half of the circle. There we are. And then we extend it. Well, we don't even need this half either. And then we extend it slightly. There we are. And then what we can do is connect that to the link point, which is going to be this edge here. The key is we're going to use the lower edge and not the top edge. And the reason for that is simply because the top edge will follow along and will define a window. The lower edge defines the main frame. So this is the important element. And And if we were going to define that, what we could do is we could switch over to active element mode and then click here, just put it in the right spot, and then unclick, click here, and rotate it. And we can just try and get a feel for the basic angle that we're going to want. Perhaps build the cockpit section with a circular interior instead of the flattened octagon. Well, the flattened octagon is just the default interior. I haven't even started on the cockpit interior yet. This is literally small hall demo with a chair stuck in it. The cockpit section is going to be a challenge to design on the interior, but I think that's going to be fun. I'm not too worried about it at the moment. What I am worried about is getting this to go correctly. And that means we're going to want to bring it in. There we are. But this is definitely not large enough, so let's go ahead and scale it up on several axes until we get a feeling like that's how you'd want to see it if you were looking out of that chair. So if that's the case, we need it to be a little bit taller. And we also need it to be wider, because you can see that from the front, this cuts off your vision pretty badly. So we're going to want to pull this out into more of a circle. Let's go ahead and turn on connected proportional editing and do some work. All right, I can't see. Yeah. That's going to have a pretty big swoop. All right, I think that's probably fine. But what happens if we drag it down? Okay, so dragging it up is important unless we're going to actually drag it out. We can drag this guy down though, right? Yeah, that's fine. And that gives us this arc. This part's too thin, so we'll make it a little thicker. All right, that seems like it might be okay. Let's go ahead and bring this up like this, and then connect it. And now we're going to want to create the rest of the story. So extrude and then scale up. Let's go ahead and flip all these faces, and then we'll go ahead and return. Okay, so that's not going to work. So just click here. So if we were just going to go straight off of connecting to the upper bar, then this is what it would look like. Something like this. But that's obviously not going to be perfect for our needs because it's very tall, as you can see. So what we're going to want to do is adjust this so that it feels a little bit more organic, and that means we're going to scale it up on the y-axis like this. Yeah, I think that's probably going to look okay once we connect it up here. All right, so if we were to just select everything and make them all smooth, and then make sure that our auto smooth is on, the basic idea here is I don't know whether that's going to be a good curve. It doesn't feel real great. This curve does not, from the side, it does not make me feel like I know what's going on. Maybe if we pull these back manually to give us more of an aggressive feel. That's a little better. Still pretty bad. Alright, well anyhow, this all goes back. So we'll just grab a fistful of verts here, and then bring them here, rotate. Yeah. Rotate. And bring back. Something like that. Feels bad. Feels bad. First things first. Well, the interior is just like the exterior, but only part of it, like here maybe? So let's go ahead and break out another circle and stick it into our area here. You know what? I don't think this is long enough. I think that's probably going to be a little bit better. Okay, well, anyhow, this is in our... like this. Now, in order for the people to see, it needs to be quite large, like this. But obviously there's going to be like a panel in the way or something similar, so that might be interesting. Either way, we've got some stuff to get rid of here, so let's go ahead and do that. And then if we turn on proportional editing, we should be able to drag the bottom into a shape that feels more in line with what the person in the cockpit would like to see. So here, we're going to just go ahead and pull it back like this. Yeah, that's more or less correct. And we can pull forward any given elements if we feel that would help. So that's actually got a concave curve to it rather than a convex curve to it. Interesting. This is too low. This is almost exactly the opposite shape of the one I did before. So let's go ahead and extrude inwards, create ourselves a pane of glass. And then we can hit smooth and then shrink. We can extrude inwards again, smooth, and then shrink again. And then for now, we will just, there. And we can remove doubles. You know what? I think that might be the problem. That last thing I do might be the problem. So for now, let's just go ahead and create a flat face. So do we want it to bulge downwards and outwards? I think we do. We might have to rethink some of this, but let's go ahead and hook it up and see how it looks. So this glass. Alright, so when you hook it up like that, it's probably not too bad, but I don't believe that all of these faces have been told to be smooth. There we are. And you can start to see where we're going to need to adjust some of it if we want to keep it looking good. We've got some places where the glass is too close to the surface, And we can either pull the glass back or the surface forward. I think it's probably easier to pull the surface forward. Don't know whether it's better, but it's easier. That's a little better, yeah. And creating some nice elements here for our pane of glass to merge into. It's probably easiest done by extending off of the pane of glass like this and just making sure that those are rated as whole rather than anything else. And then we can pull them forward and down. And then we can finish off here. Like so. And then, of course, it's just a matter of filling in this base. There's lots of ways to do this, and normally you should avoid tries. But this is not an animated part, so I'm not too fussed. But you can see that that leaves us with this nasty situation over here. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to extend these guys across like this. And then we're going to try and get this to work. And it's going to be a fair amount of finagling because it's trying to link up a curve with a straight line, and that's never great. The question is, do we want to radiate out from the center or out from the edge? Well, let's try them both. Let's try from the center first. So, or from the edge first. Let's try from the center first. There. Come on. What the hell? I don't know what was up with that. You know, that doesn't look too bad. Might need just a little tiny bit of touch up to keep it from having a strange crease right there. Just because we're using auto curve or auto smooth, and that has some unusual characteristics. Yeah. I can live with that look. At least that part. We might need to radically change some of the rest, though. So if we are in the seat, then this is what we can see out the window. As you can tell, we have a pretty good view straight and down. If we go on over there using Shift F, this is what we can see when we're sitting in the seat. So we have a pretty good view down, but our side view is pretty cut off. Now we have heavy armor up here. We're going to have a ton of armor up above our head. Let's try that again. We're going to have a ton of armor up above our head. So it does become a question of how we can see at the sides, or, you know, how we can have a better view over here. And I think the answer to that is a mechanism. We can have shutters, heat-proof shutters that close when we are trying to go someplace. So if we do that, then this core element here will be a structural element that we will need to have as having thickness, which isn't too hard. We'll just go ahead and think about that for a second. So the reason I'm thinking is because this here, this weird chopped up area where we merge the two, is technically part of the body of this object. So we have to select it as well. But that makes it a little bit weird down at the bottom. I guess it's not too bad. Oh, darn it. So duplicate rather than... Yeah, that's fine. Something like that as the inside. Thinking to myself as I try to do stuff live is obviously the best way to handle this. Nobody likes to see things that are pre-planned and intelligently done. You're all here to see someone go so that you feel better about yourself, right? Well, everybody goes so I guess that's fine. Now we're going to want to also clone this area, but where do we stop? I guess we can stop here because it's easier to delete than to add. So we'll just drag it up and drag it back, and that will be the heavy structural element. And then we can merge these elements together. So let's make this a little bit bigger and pull it in and up a little bit more. And then we can screw that up. I'm doing this manually rather than using a bridge edge loops because I'm not entirely sure how it's going to look. And I kind of want to keep my eye on it the whole way through. So you can see how we're starting to get pretty bad shear here. And I think that's a mistake, so we're going to just put in a try, keep it flat. So now, the idea being, when you are in the seat and you're looking forward, what you'll see is that will be blocked, but you'll be able to see around it due to shutters somehow. I don't know. If we're going to do shutters, we can still put the armor on the bottom. This cockpit might not be a good idea. I'm going to come back to it later. I've got to think about it for a while. But there are lots of other parts that we need. So we'll go ahead and do one of the other parts before we do our cockpit. So let's go ahead and stick our parts over here somewhere. One of the obvious and most important parts is going to be wings and stuff. But before we can do that, we need to have a set of body elements that aren't just this endless straight line. At some point, the plane bulges. Now I do have this as a template. This is just a quick little block sketch I made to try and give us the feel for it. It's not really very close to what I'm going for anymore because it's a little bit squat, but it has the same basic idea. I don't know if you can see this clearly in Twitch. I certainly can't if I keep spinning the screen like that. You see how this comes up into a body shape out of the nose? There are two basic ways to accomplish that. One is that the nose can widen into the body shape, and the other is that the nose can stop and the body shape can start. And I think that the latter is probably easier. To do that, we're going to need to take the basic frame of the ship, which is somewhere here. There it is. And just steal the connector, and then we're not going to need to worry about making the rest of it fit. So just boom, there we are. And this is, yeah, not the first one here, so I'll delete that stuff there. And that's the connector for how the hull becomes, come on. So this is the connector for how the hull butts up against our new body. And what we're going to want to do is create a body frame that has kind of a hunched shoulder look. So even though this frame is what we are arguing against or arguing with, we're also going to need to build a much more stately shape. So let's go ahead and flip the direction here. And then we'll go ahead and start up a new object with a cube. And we'll start to just block out the basic shape that we would like for our cube. And that involves being much, much bigger. And this is going to be the core frame for all of our inhabitable areas and stuff. So there are rooms in the neck and stuff, but this is going to be, I guess you could say, the heart of the ship. Because it's going to be the biggest part of the ship, at least in terms of room space. So, yeah, let's go ahead and drag them both up. If we bring this up like this, and then drag this forward, and then we can just bring the whole thing out like this. Oop. That's not actually on the edge, though, so hold on. Creek. Zuck. Mirror. There we are. Clipping on. Alright, so with this in mind, we can grab this area here. Pull it to the side. And we'll want to bring this back and pull this out like this. Now, if we wanted to do more, we should put in a crease and then bring this up. And maybe forward a little bit. Alright, so let's go ahead and take a look at what this might look like by dragging it over to our temporary neck and just sticking it on. It should go on the exact same height and space, so yep, that's correct. So with this in mind, you can see how it's not actually larger than the largest possible armor. Whether the armor is right side up or upside down, it has a definite show over the top of the object. I don't know whether that's good or bad, to be honest, but it seems like a very small frame, so I think we can have a lot more beef in order to get this to feel more like it is the bulk of the ship. I radically underestimated the size of the ship and made something that was too small. Something like this feels a little bit better. Now this neck is quite long. In reality, the neck is probably only going to be roughly this long. So if that's the case, I think we're a little too wide up here. Just bring that down. And then how does that look with the more length? I guess that's still pretty good. So that's going to be like our overall hull, core body. So this will be our, it's going to have our escape pods and our places where we can get out. What are those called? Airlocks. One of those space words. Airlock, escape pods, etc. But that's going to be basically the end of the ship. So this is going to be like an entrance when there's no other exits. And the rest of the ship is going to be largely about the mechanics of getting into space. So I think it's probably worth blocking those out as well in more detail. The first thing I would like is for another cube block. We'll go ahead and edit this on the job here in the middle here. And as before, we want to mirror it. No reason not to. Just makes our job easier. Bonk. And making this, what I want to have happen is I want this to be just large enough that it, just large enough that it has some kind of overlap like this. Just so that we get a good feel for having it be sort of feeling like it's integrated, like the edges are blurred, and that seems like it's a good way to do. And then what this will be is this will be all of our core elements for our functional body. So what I'm thinking is that this isn't just an element; it's a series of. Let me go ahead and show you. It's easier to show you than tell you. I'm thinking that this will be like something like this. Where inside we have a whole bunch of parts that you can choose. So the idea here being that this is sort of like a cargo container for our... oh, hold on, I've got clipping turned off. God damn it, that means I've got like 10,000 faces in the middle. So the idea here being, there are a lot of chunky things that you may want to add to your starship, like batteries and other things that aren't smooth. And we can stick them inside of this container. Now, this container is larger than it absolutely needs to be. And I might have to resize things later, but if you take a look at how it compares to the size of a person, this is pretty big. It is, in fact, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 meters tall, which as space planes go might be a little bit big. So I think that the best option is to stop doing it like this and instead have it so that it is just an open frame like this. And then you can stick the things in here. So if we were to create a circle and then drag it on over, just for prototyping's sake. Scale 0.5-ish, I guess. So it would be something like this. But that wouldn't work, would it? Because those are not on even numbers. So in order to make it on even numbers, I either have to make it bigger or smaller. And I think smaller is probably the way to go with this setup. So we'll do this. We'll duplicate, bring it over. Duplicate, bring it over. I think 3 is enough. Rather, 3 by 2. So if we bring this whole set into here, if this is really big, like huge, we can make it a 2 meter wide set and have it be 2 by 3. That's a little bit hard to see, though. To make it smooth is the key, because the idea here is we don't want our ship to have any of the industrial feel that we've been getting out of our ships so far. And that means hiding a lot of the elements inside of a generic space and using generic cappers. So what we could do is, instead of setting it up like this, we could end up setting it up like this and having this in here be just a slot machine, you know, a slot set. So it would be like this. I guess this is probably a little bit better. And then we could just grab the left side, duplicate, drag it over, and scale it up slightly. There. I just screwed that up, didn't I? Scale it up individually slightly. Like this. And then we could just bring this and this out. And then over. Invert. With the idea being that this would be, this would have some kind of dulled feel to it, so it didn't feel like it was aggressively we want it to merge together with the rest of the ship. So if we go over to active element and this, and then click here, go and do this. Did I duplicate rather than extend? Because I'm that smart. I did, didn't I? E for extend. Did that not work? E for extend. If you shout at it, it works. I have this on good authority. So the idea being it would be something like this, and then you would have an easy time feeling like it was part of a nice, smooth system, rather than being just random components slotted in. We'd have some really normalized components that you could slot in, and it would feel like they were always merging just right into the hull. Having a dedicated carrier device would make that easier to look at, but it's not necessary because there's nothing preventing you from just slapping it into the hole wherever you want. I don't know whether I like the basic idea of this shape, though. When I look at how it integrates into the rest of the ship, I can't help but think it doesn't integrate very well. I might have to think about that some more. Well, let's go ahead and block out the engines. Now, previously I made some engines that had an interesting shape to them. The basic concept of most of this sort of modular setup is that the cereal box is king. Modules shaped like a cereal box are way easier to use and more interesting to look at. Excuse me, more interesting to look at. So in general, you get the hiccups. No. In general, you want cereal box shaped modules. This could be our engine. I'm not sure whether the size matches up though. So no, it doesn't. Scale it up by 2 here. That's too big. Scale it up by 1.5. That's better. Not perfect, but better. So the idea here being that these engines are hybrid engines that can use either atmosphere or fuel. And they're generally going to be located pretty low on the ship, like this. We're also going to want to have ion drives, but I think that those can be put directly in the back. There might be like cargo loaders and stuff you could also put in the back, because the ion engines don't have any intakes. These do have intakes, so they need to be like this. The wing is going to be a little bit obnoxious because there's not really any clear... there are 2 basic principles with wings and space planes. The first principle is that the wing should be quite small, because the space plane travels at hypersonic velocities. So in general, you want to have a small wing. And that's why you'll see real art of space planes, and the wings will be like this. And the engines might be on the tips of the wings rather than at the base of the wings. But either way, you have like a wing shaped like this, and it's not a very big wing. However, there is also the argument that maybe you should go ahead and use fairly large wings, fairly chunky wings, and have the wings play more purposes than just wing. So it would be something that you could conceivably put stuff in. So you'd have like a cargo wing, basically. There's also the matter of the fact that a lot of the times what you're going to want is a wing membrane. So the wing membrane hides the shape of this object. A good example of a wing membrane would be something like this, where it would be boop, boop, scaled down, and then this would be forward and in, and then we could just grab all of this stuff and drag it here. And maybe this stuff can drag it even further. And then we can just take this and drag it out. And then we can scale Z. So a wing membrane might be something like this, where it hides the shape of your ship and blurs it together. And that sort of wing membrane is normally used to have the fuselage merge into the wing. So if the engine was going to be on the outside, then this setup might be like this. Something like this, for example. And it makes it so that your ship has a better line to it. And that's useful for a couple of reasons. One reason it's useful is because it gives you another place to catch the air as you're descending through the atmosphere. An armored plate that has some lift capability. Great, right? Another is it doesn't look like it's a giant straight thing. If you have a wing membrane that's got a little bit of curve to it, a little bit of body to it, it feels pretty good in terms of feeling like your ship has an organic shape to it. Now, this wing membrane I obviously threw together in literally 15 seconds, but the idea is the same. The only problem is that these wing membranes, these wing membranes are meant to work with wings that have fairly large, a fairly direct connection to the hull. So, for example, it works best when you've got a giant delta wing or something similar and you're merging into it. When you have elements like this giant room or these giant engines, the membrane doesn't feel quite right. But what I would like to do is have the membrane feel right. I'd like to have the membrane feel like it's part of our attempt to make this ship work. So I haven't figured out how to make membranes merge with large objects and still feel right. They're supposed to soften the feel of these objects, but if the objects are huge, then they're probably going to be too big to soften. The engines in particular are a little bit nightmarish because they have to be able to get their intake. But maybe that means that I need to have a special engine that's built into a membrane. So you'd have like the engine-less membrane, and then you have the engine membrane, and the two would be compatible. So if I do that, I can duplicate this and drop this into that. Let's go ahead and bump. Something like this. So if we have a setup like this, then that feels a lot better because it's actually integrated. It's part of the overall system. And you can do fun tricks to try and optimize how it looks. For example, we can drag this out. No reason to have it stick so close to the body. So something like that wouldn't feel too bad. If we unhide our main body, you can see that that seems to look okay, except for the small fact that the engine output, the exhaust port, is inside of our room. So if we move the room forward to the point where the exhaust port is behind us, we're going to have to be careful that we don't have this kind of clip through. So we're going to need to be careful of exactly how this room is shaped and the wing is shaped so that they get along. And that could be making the wing bigger, or it could be making the room smaller. A number of other possibilities hiding in there. We'll figure it out as we go along. Well, I've been streaming for 2.5 hours, and haven't had a comment for an hour and a half, so I think that that is fine. Thanks for stopping by, everybody. I had a lot of fun, and I'm going to be working some more on this ship later now that I've got more of it blocked out. But that should be everything that I needed for the day. The only question left in my mind is whether or not we're going to go with an upside-down re-entry. There are a number of reasons why it might not be great. And I'm trying to think. The actual shuttle did some weird upside down stuff too. It didn't re-enter upside down though. It flew upside down. So it exited upside down and re-entered right side up. I'll have to think about it some more. Because another option is, of course, that I can just make the top side deviate more, even though it's not armor plate. A lot of options. Well, before I sign off, let's just try something simple here. Yeah, it does make a big difference, and we'll have to decide on that. All right, presuming that Twitch works on Wednesday, I will see you on... Oh, sorry. Presuming that Twitch works on Sunday, I'll see you on Sunday. I'll hang around and chat for a little bit longer, but I think you all have had enough of me. So I'll see you then.